One thing that never gets old is seeing a brand new Genshin character drop. Seeing what they do, how they're different, what new things it's gonna bring to the table, all that jazz. It's great. It has a lot of stuff to look at in every character. Skill and burst, ascension talents, normal attack animations, lore, all that good stuff. But one detail that I think goes underappreciated on every new character is this little thing right here. This is the third passive, aka the utility passive. It's unlocked as soon as you get the character, and works differently from the rest of their kit. While the Ascension passives will help a character with their playstyle, or even define their playstyle, the third passive is a generally non-synergistic talent to help with exploration or material management, and they are fascinating. Passive talents are rarely anywhere close to as useful as the rest of a character's kit, but can add so much flavor to it. They reflect on a character's lore more than anything, and are a great little detail. As the game has gone on, there have been tons of these added in, with the devs only getting more creative, so I thought it'd be fun to go through every character's passive talent and rank them. Now, there are a few caveats before we actually get ranking. Firstly, this is gonna be based mostly on gameplay utility. While actual function is cool and all, I think it's cooler to have a unique effect that actually ties into what the character does, whether it's useful or not. On top of that, skills that only enhance combat prowess will be docked some points. That's just not what the utility passive is supposed to be. Every character already has 2 full slots for that, and as Kokomi demonstrates, they can just make more. There's a character very early on who demonstrates this, so look forward to that hot take. Also, many characters have shared passives. For the most part, these will be grouped together, as most of the time characters get roughly the same value out of them. This isn't always the case, as there is one exception, but it will be most of the time. Now with that established, let's get into the ranking. Coming in dead last is the Traveler in every form. Their passive is, well, nothing. They don't have one. This automatically puts them at the bottom because, well, anything is better than this, literally. But not always much better, as we see with Kokomi. Now, Kokomi is an interesting case in a few ways. She has 2 different skills labeled as utility passives, but one of them is solely for combat and the other is solely for exploration, so I'm only counting the second one, as it fits a lot more as a utility passive. Now regarding the skill itself, Kokomi is the only character to share an exact skill with another character, yet be in a different place on the ranking. She isn't substantially lower than the other character with a swimming stamina reduction, because it's pretty bad on any character, but it's especially bad on a character who can already walk on water. Following that, but still in the realm of being near useless, we have a group of characters sharing expedition time reduction. Expeditions are a very non-impactful part of the game. For me, and I'd imagine most others, they're an easy way to get the mining daily done and nothing else. I collect them once a day, and if they're done slightly sooner than others, it is completely irrelevant. Coming right after that is the expedition reward bonus for similar reasons. Expeditions are unimpactful, they get me my mining requirements, and I don't really care if Navia comes back with 3 extra oranges. Finally, moving on to something interesting, we have Ito's unique skill. When he hits trees for wood, he has a chance to get an extra drop. I can potentially see this one maybe being useful, but at the same time, when are you gonna go out of your way to get wood? And when are you gonna be so determined to get wood that you want to make sure to bring Ito along for that extra little bit? The most interesting thing about this passive is that any wood you get from it doesn't count towards the daily 200 wood limit, which I don't think a single person has ever reached nor even known about. Keeping up Inazuma chance skills, we got Toma's fishing bonus. This one has a chance to double any fish you fish up in Inazuma. Now there is some value in this skill. For getting the catch in the pipe, this bonus is one of the best in the game. Anything to speed up that process is hugely valued. Catching extra fish would be a great passive, if it wasn't restricted to one area, and chance-based, and if fishing was used for more than 2 weapons. This passive is unfortunately tied to one of the most forgotten mechanics in the game, which is a pattern you'll start to see. Even so, once you've gotten the weapons maxed out, it doesn't really do anything. The funny thing about this one is that it seems like it's supposed to be part of a series. Every other regional passive that isn't tied to some unique mechanic has existing variants across the entire continent, but not fishing. I guess it's just that forgotten, but considering how annoying it is, maybe that's for the best. We now pass into the skills that aren't useless, but are still far from useful. Starting us off is Kokomi's other half, Beidou, boasting a swim stamina reduction and means to actually use it. There isn't actually much to boast about, however. It doesn't work in Fontaine's waters, and outside of that, swimming is a very, very uncommon occurrence in the game. There's not much more to say here. It's a skill that's better to have than not to have, but you'd also be better off with most anything else. While we're playing around in the water, we can knock out Lynette too. She illustrates the location of those underwater healing fish spots on the map. I think very highly of minimap skills, but this one's a great distance below the rest. Making it easier to find the location of a modestly helpful resource that appears in half of one nation is beyond niche, but at least it has a situation where it's helpful. Now we have a very interesting one, and it's definitely more applicable than the rest. Statistically speaking, Arlecchino has the best passive in the game, easily. It's a flat 40% pyro damage bonus, but disables her healing from other people. It literally defines her playstyle. So, why is it so far down here? Well, it's simple. While this is a phenomenal talent, it completely fails as a utility talent. Characters have these two talents up here to establish their role in battle. This third skill down here is the one for flavor. It's meant to be a little bit of fun, an iffy boost to exploration, or something that represents the character well. Arlecchino just doesn't have anything like that. All three of her talents are just boosts her combat gameplay, and not even in a flavorful way like the next character we'll discuss. Honestly, I was debating even saying she has a passive because of Kokomi. Kokomi has a similar skill that increases her healing at the cost of her entire crit, but also has a proper exploration passive in addition to that. But I figured that Arla mains would lynch me for doing that, but I also don't think she deserves to be very high up because of the points I already discussed. So she ends up here. Honestly, she's kind of a wild card who can fit anywhere depending on conditions, so I'm just gonna move on to something hopefully simpler. This is not simpler. I'm much higher on Child's passive than Arla because it nails the flavor. Even if it is just a combat buff, it's a combat buff that really fits the lore of the person it's attached to. And, more importantly, I really like it because it's practically useless. On paper, it sounds crazy. +1 talent level to all normal attacks for the entire party? That's amazing. What's the issue? Well, answer me this, friend. How often do you use normal attacks in a party with Child? He may get some charge attacks, but other than that, he's using solely his skill, which doesn't benefit from normal attack scaling at all. And he very rarely has teammates who go on field to start throwing hands. Is Bennett really gonna benefit from his standard attack string being slightly stronger? Probably not. Honestly, this makes me love the skill more. It seems so amazing, but in practicality is nearly useless, which honestly just makes it fit Child more. Speaking of being nearly useless, Lisa's up next. Lisa actually has a really solid effect, boasting a whopping 20% chance to refund potion ingredients. The refunding skills are generally pretty solid, so they can save you a lot of resources in the long run, and Lisa has the highest chance of triggering one. But there's just one catch. Answer me this, dear viewer, when is the last time you crafted a potion? Better yet, when's the last time you remembered potions were in the game? Potions aren't even bad, they're just a very weird mechanic that's barely been touched since 1.0, and they sit at the very bottom of the crafting menu, so it's hard to remember them, especially since they can't be used in any of the places you really want to use them. Could be useful for local legends, I guess. Kirara and Aloy sneak into the next spot with their shared passive of a silent hunt. Basically, they can't be detected by boars until they actively attack one. This is a weird skill that's been power crept out of existence, but not by other skills. Boars are a useful source of meat, but ever since Sumeru, the devs have been adding creatures that just drop more meat than them. Sumpter beasts are the big example. Not only are they a better source of meat, they're usually in groups with eremites, so you can take them out without having to go out of your way to track them down. They're just right there with enemies you're gonna be killing anyways, and if they're already hostile, you aren't gonna gain much by sneaking, since the eremites will spot you right away. It's not a bad passive, and it's actually pretty useful in the early game. Much like Lisa's, however, it's tied to a mechanic that the game has just grown out of over time. Emily's another character who rides a fine line between being a cool flavor skill and pure combat. While she is built around burning, and that burning res makes her combat much better. I've also died to burning grass more times than I'd like to admit, so I'll just call it a nice exploration buff and move on. Mauve Wiki gets points for flavor. I really like how well her passive fits her. She decreases the cooldown of all Night Soul transmissions, those swapping off abilities, for everyone in the party. I love and hate this mechanic for the exact same reason. It only helps if you have a lot of Natlan characters together. I love it because it makes perfect sense on Mauve Wiki as one of my favorite skills flavor wise. I hate it because if you're me and you have this for Natlan characters, it's not gonna help very much. Nice for exploration, but getting points docked for limited use cases. Some of this is going to sound very familiar, since we just talked about the sister skill to this. The silent butterfly catch shared by Sayu, Yao Yao, and Lan Yan is functionally identical to the silent boar hunt we were just on, but for a different creature. While this has also become less useful over time with the addition of the crystal fly trap and the very recent rework to condensed resin, crystal cores are still a very useful thing to have around, much more so than meat, and I'd be lying if I said I hadn't gotten plenty of use out of this skill. We now come to what is easily my favorite passive in the game, because it represents everything I love about these skills. So, to get the obvious out of the way, Baizu's passive is functionally useless. When he's in the party, any plant that you pick will heal the active character. The thing is, this would be a great skill on basically any other character. The health is easy to trigger, and while it's not a substantial amount, it adds up over time. The problem is, if you want to heal people with Baizu, you can also just...
The doctor will see you now.
However, they could not have made a skill that fits Baizu any better. The doctor who's always encouraging you to stay healthy and eat a balanced diet, this is the perfect fit for him. I love the skill because it is a perfect example of what a passive should be. A modestly useful ability that the character has to help with overworld stuff that's perfectly tailored to represent the character. I can't put it any higher because it is still pretty useless, but let it be known that it is my absolute favorite in terms of flavor. Also, this passive talent can really combo with some other ones. Things that Hida grabs with her skill will grant the healing, and Farina's healing overflow will heal other people when this triggers. Plus, I'm pretty sure this is the only passive in the game that scales directly off a character's stat. A really weird skill, but I absolutely love this one. We're now at the second, sort of third, of our stamina reduction skills, with this being the glide reduction ship by Kale, Amber, and Venti. I think this marks the point where the skills start turning from niche to decently helpful. Any reduction to stamina is one that I'm a fan of, but gliding just isn't quite as useful as the other ones. The problem is, you only get serious value out of this skill if you're gliding for a really long distance, because it already takes so little stamina. This isn't a situation that never comes up, as there are plenty of times when trying to glide across a massive gap, and the reduction does end up being a needed boost, but it isn't quite as universal as I'd like. Speaking of non-universal buffs, let's talk about cooking. It's another one of those mechanics that lost relevance as the game went on, but not nearly to the same degree as some of the other ones we've talked about. Cooking can still offer some nice benefits, especially against local legends, and there are plenty of helpful talents that give you a chance to double the outcome. The first of these, however, is not that. Hu Tao and Ayato share a talent that lets them double the outcome of any dish in the game, and with the highest chance to do so out of any of these talents. The catch is, it's not a perfect replica. They instead make suspicious dishes that provide only a fraction of the original buff. There is an argument for these being the worst passives in the game. They're completely outclassed by a group of talents that are on multiple easy to obtain characters, and essentially have no reason to ever be selected once you get the full collection. However, much like Baizu's, these skills are up here for the flavor they bring, or don't in this case. These characters cannot cook, so it's fun to see that reflected in their gameplay with the suspicious meals. It's not a useful talent, but it's a well-designed passive talent, which is something that I respect a lot more. Moving on to the people who are actually qualified to be in a kitchen, Noelle and Xinian have the first of many proper food doubling talents, with theirs triggering on defense buffing meals. Normally, defense is the worst stat to buff, and while that isn't not the case with food, it's not as bad as most other situations. Food gives independent buffs based on each stat, so there's no opportunity cost to using some. Plus, local legends hit hard enough that the defense can actually come in handy. Not a bad talent to have, especially since on 2 characters scale off defense. Though I wish I had given my main something a bit more fitting and flashier. The cons of an early character, perhaps. Now for a skill that fits absolutely perfectly, we've got Zhongling with double attack dishes. It's here for basically the same reason you just went over, but attack is more useful than defense. That, and the fact that it's on a chef instead of a rock musician. Why does she have that? We're already on a roll here. Let's knock out the stamina restoring dishes next. I'm putting these above the other two because I use them slightly more often when I'm trying some insane long distance glide or climb. The real benefit of these foods is they offer something that can't be replicated from a character buff. You can easily get a massive, if shorter lived, boost to attack or defense to certain characters, but stamina is a much harder stat to affect. It gives the food a nice roll, and makes the characters who double its outcome helpful, even if the choices make zero sense at all. Did they just decide that all musical artists need to buff cooking? What's up with that? We take a short break from food to go on a nice swim through Fontaine Seas, where I'll be knocking out 2 different, yet similar skills simultaneously, Siege Wings and Farinas. They're skills that provide massive boosts to underwater combat. Siege Wings will periodically heal you, while Farinas reduces the cooldown of xenochromatic attacks. Underwater combat is far from the most complex system, and 90% of the battles can be won without a thought. Where these two really come in handy is, again, local legends. I swear, these guys brought life to like half the skills on this list. Anyways, there are nearly a dozen local legends fought underwater, and they're tough enough that these skills can really come in handy. With that much health, the slight cooldown on what's basically your only attack really adds up over time, and with how clunky underwater movement can be, you're bound to get hit by stuff, and Siege Queen's skill is the only reliable source of healing you get during these fights. If you want to take on the underwater local legends, these skills are amazing, but they'd be higher up if there are more than 9 of those. Speaking of higher up, climbing stamina reduction is next on the list. While there have been plenty of alternate forms of vertical movement over the years, if you're outside of Natlan, climbing is still the best for extreme distances. The problem with climbing is that it's either really slow or really exhausting. That's where this skill comes in handy. That 20% reduction can let you fit in a few extra jumps, substantially increasing the distance you can cover without needing to slow climb. The character choices for this are really weird though. For a long time, this skill was exclusive to Zhao, which makes perfect sense. He spends a lot of time on top of mountains, his gameplay is all about vertical movement, and he saves a ton of stamina from that weird dash technique he has. Then Candace came out and she has it because, they wanted to put on a 4-star, I guess? Yeah. You remember all the way back when you talked about Toma and his weird skill that was clearly meant to be part of a set of skills that just never got completed? Well, he wasn't the first case of that. Ganyu, Zhongli, and Diluc all boast skills to refund some of the ores spent when crafting their respective weapon type. The observer view may notice there's only 3 characters here, but 5 weapon types. That's because they never bothered to add anything for swords or tomes. Great. Craftable weapons can be pretty nice, and getting a guaranteed refund on some of the most annoying things needed to make them is pretty sweet. I'd rank these skills a lot higher if they applied to all weapon types and if it was a bigger refund. 15% sounds like a lot, but it only results in 7 ore per weapon. Still useful no doubt, but not super substantial. Also, I seriously don't see the reason why they wouldn't complete this set. They're useful enough skills that just got weirdly forgotten about after version 1. And I think a lot of people would be happier to get ore refunds than another meaningless expedition bonus. And come on man, Xilonen is right there, she's literally a blacksmith. Why should she not give sword refunds? We're going back to the kitchen for a bit for another entry of food doubling passives, this time for healing. The reasons for this one being higher than the others should be pretty obvious. 90% of the time we use food is because someone's low on health or completely out of health, so it's handy to have a few extra revival items around, just in case. And this time, the characters who have the skill actually make sense. A tavern keep and 2 extremely religious sisters, but more importantly, all characters who can heal, though they still got a musician in the group. Seriously, what's with this pattern? We're not quite done with healing food, because now we have what's likely the single strangest passive in the game, Mizuki's. So, this one makes it so that whenever you eat non-revival healing food, there's a chance that it'll restore more health than normal, with that chance increasing with friendship level of all stats. Realistically, this effect isn't great, but I had to throw it this high up for its totally unique and super flavorful effects. There's absolutely nothing like it, and it really only makes sense on Mizuki. I'd say it has about as much character as Baisu's, but with a much more useful benefit. Still not a great benefit, but at least it helps sometimes. We now tip over into regularly useful effects, no more niche situations or weird restrictions. Kicking off this section is Ningguang with a rock detecting minimap ability. It functions similarly to all the local specialty finders, but instead highlights any mineable ore, regardless of nation. Rocks aren't something you'll need all the time, but if you're trying to make refines for a craftable weapon, this thing's a lifesaver. I really wish there were more like it, skills that highlight certain groups of objects on the overworld. I'm not really sure what else to get that isn't already covered by local specialties or the treasure compass. Maybe it's just a one-of-a-kind skill. Okay, so I know that I said we were done with the weird effects with niche use cases, but that isn't entirely true. Almost all of Natlan's cast have passives that restore phlogiston in some way. The trigger for these varies from character to character, but I figured it was easiest to just group them all together. While the effects are limited to one nation, Natlan is pretty big, and you're almost certainly gonna be using these characters while exploring Natlan. They all want phlogiston and benefit from these skills, and they're all very fitting for their character who has them. If you want a proper ranking, Xilonen is at the bottom with a nice little transmission trigger, since it requires multiple Natlanis in the party, and also because I'm still mad that she didn't have the Sword Forge bonus. Eon-san comes next. It's a good trigger, just falling below half phlogiston, but it also restores the least out of any of these characters, and from my experience, triggers just a bit less frequently than I like. Veressa follows with easily the worst trigger, but the most fitting one too. Whenever you eat food in Natlan, you'll get 20 phlogiston back. Extremely fitting of the character, I can't hate it. Chaska's next with 25 restored upon defeating an enemy. There's a decent cooldown on this, but it's a pretty hefty amount of stuff with a very easy trigger. Finally, Silali restores 21 trigger in Night Soul Burst. No cooldown, trivial trigger, super simple, super reliable. All in all, a very nice selection of skills that are on the right characters to make use of them. Not bad at all. But not the best of the phlogiston skills. No, that comes from Aoife. I grouped it separately from the previous collection because it's a skill that spends phlogiston rather than regaining it. To be exact, Aoife will spend 10 phlogiston when a character or Saurian falls to low health to restore a nice chunk of it back. Is it as good as getting a chunk of phlogiston back? Probably not, but it is an ability that makes perfect sense on a veterinarian, is completely unique and super creative, and is far from a bad effect. Full win in my book. We're almost done with region-specific abilities now, I swear. Fremine and Nuvolette have similar abilities that just got lumped together because they work towards the same goal: underwater movement. Nuvi makes you faster, and Fremine reduces stamina consumption. The ocean is big, and the more effectively you can cross it, the better. They're helpful with local legends, they're helpful with exploration, they're just handy skills to have, nothing bad to say. We now have finally come to the end of the cooking talents, with easily the best and most creative of them coming from Escoffier. She can place down her skill like it's the Paramatic Transmuter, and after enough elemental attacks, it'll produce a meal, completely for free. There's so much fun stuff about this skill. It fits Escoffier incredibly well. It's a unique way to integrate the passive into the rest of the character's kit, and it actually produces some really nice meals. One of the 3 5-star dishes is only obtained through this thing, and even its drawbacks are stylized. Just look at that description. It's a talent that absolutely nails its flavor while providing a decent effect. Nothing to complain about here. Yet another talent that interacts with a very separated mechanic from the game, Kavai and Yoimiya's furnishing refund vastly varies in value from player to player. The teapot is not for everyone. It's a completely separate mode where you get to build the house of your dreams. While some live in the teapot, some completely ignore it. I use it on occasion. I'll suddenly get a wild inspiration to overhaul my loadout, then forget to touch it for the next few months. Anyways, if you do use the teapot for anything more than battle pass progress, this skill is a massive help. It's a 100% chance to return about a quarter of materials used, with the 2 characters refunding materials for different types of decor. They work very similarly to the forging skills, but I like them more for a few reasons. The refund is larger, they refund more than one type of material used, and I find myself crafting furniture much more often than weapons, so just get more value over time out of the skill. I can see people wanting to put this one anywhere, but to me, it's solidly here near the top of the list. I am a sucker for speed bonuses. However minute of an increase it is, if it helps you go from point A to point B quicker than I otherwise would, I'll be using it constantly. That's why I really like Aurora and Anjanyu's glide speed bonus. The really sweet part about this skill is that it's on people who can actually use it. Both these two have easy ways to launch themselves into the air, actually allowing them to make great use of the skill, and making it synergize perfectly into their kit. Not to mention, it combos perfectly with the fan from Inazuma, so you actually get some crazy airspeed if you use the 2 in tandem, surpassing running speed and even some traversal skills. Or, in other words, gliding would be faster. Oh, this is a big one. Sucrose, Dori, Yaimiko, Eula, Layla, Xingqiu, Albedo, Ridesley, Mona, Alhaitham, and Ayaka. Jeez. All have some form of the universally useful alchemy refund. They vary in what exact group of resources they refund and what those are used for, but they're all similar enough and they're all really good. Grinding for these things is oftentimes the most obnoxious part of leveling up a character or weapon, and especially talents. Anything to reduce the grind is vastly appreciated, and fortunately, these do a great job. They trigger often enough to feel like they're always contributing, and their effects seriously add up over time. If I had to rank them, I'd say that enemy drops are more useful to double than talent books, which are about the weapon extension items. But they're all so incredibly close to each other that it really doesn't matter. These are all talents that are easy to get, incredibly handy, and somehow only the 9th spot on the list. Things are really getting good now. Skirk's skill is one that I really shouldn't like. It increases the talent level of every Hydro and Cryo character's elemental skill if the party consists only of those. In other words, it's a purely combat skill that reinforces Skirk's extremely boring team comps. It should be next to Arlecchino's as nothing but a flavorless combat boost. But that's just the thing. On its own, Skirk's skill is just bigger combat numbers. But when paired with Child, it shoots up to being one of my favorite skills in the game. If you forgot, Child increases the talent level of every party member's normal attack. So Skirk's passive is just a better, far more applicable version of Child's, which makes perfect sense since she's his master. He learned from her, but he's not as experienced, so it's not nearly as useful. It's genius! A perfect bit of storytelling hidden in 2 passive talents of all things. It's details like this that make me so excited to look at these, man. I can see an argument against putting local specialty skills so high up on the list. You don't need them, you have the interactive map. Don't get me wrong, the interactive map is a very helpful tool, but it doesn't completely undermine the mini-map markers. I've always found that the interactive map is great at telling you the general area that an item can be found, but struggles a bit when narrowing that down. Plus, the process of constantly alt-tabbing back and forth can be tiring and a bit disorienting. Local specialty markers alleviate this issue by adding a convenient in-game way to see the nearest item you're looking for and updating dynamically as you collect them. And with the somewhat recent addition of collection zones, I rarely ever find myself opening up the interactive map. I'm not saying it's not useful, and I see why people prefer it, but I've always found these to be much easier to navigate with. Also, I really like these skills to become easier to obtain over the years. They start as 5-star exclusive talents, but have gradually become a common one among 4 stars, to the point where the free characters of the last 2 regions have them. Considering how much easier they make leveling up every character from a region, it makes sense. I am super glad they did this. Except Fontaine, that one's still only on 5 stars for some reason. For how amazingly simple it is, and how long it's been around, it's honestly incredible that dash stamina reduction is still as relevant as it is. The reason is simple. Dashing is good. Really good. It's a simple and reliable way to get around the overworld quickly, and is essential for combat. Dashing is a huge part of speeding up the combat system and making the game smoother to play, and it's basically required if you're going to be tackling Abyss or Imaginarium. It lets you move to enemies faster, cancel animations, dodge attacks, and generally makes battles infinitely more fluid. Simply being able to dash more because it takes less stamina is an amazing boost. It doesn't hurt that it's super accessible too. 5 characters have it, 4 of whom are 4 stars, 1 of whom you get for free, and all of whom make great use of it. It's useful in basically every situation, and is leagues above all the other stamina reduction abilities. Like I said earlier, I am a sucker for movement buffs, and considering how much I like the rather niche glide speed improvement, you can imagine how big a fan I am of the almost universal move speed improvement skills. Rosaria, Dahlia, Dia, and Galming all somewhat share a talent that makes the party move 10% faster during either day or night. There's not a whole lot else to say about this. You move faster, and moving faster is good. The day-night restriction is kind of annoying, but can be somewhat circumvented by switching party members or using the wait feature that's oft forgotten. Finally, the division of these is really strange. There's 4 people with this talent, so I think it'd be a solid 50-50 split, but it's actually 3-1 for day to night. I can't complain too much, since it makes sense for all the characters to have the time that they do. Rosaria and Dahlia especially, since they're meant to be foils to one another. Regardless, a tremendously helpful buff that makes it much smoother to explore the overworld, though it would be nice to have the buff without the restriction. Fortunately, that's where Chiori comes in. She offers the same 10% move speed, but will apply it if any character in the party is wearing a different outfit. This includes gliders, so in other words, it's basically completely free. I don't think I have to explain this one more, it's really nice. We've made it to the top 3, the real heavy hitters. These ones are a league above the rest. It also helps us to tie it to 4 really solid characters. I say 4 because the first of these that we'll be covering is our final shared one, between Raiden and Wanderer. They have the unique ability to half weapon ascension cost, with the 2 of them applying this to swords and spears, and tomes and bows respectively. Great swords, they don't get anything. Tough. These skills will save a ton of money in the long run. It takes 150,000 more to get a 4-star weapon from 1st to 90th, and 225,000 for a 5-star. That's a lot of money. And as you get more and more weapons worth leveling, it's only ever gonna go up. Completely halving the price of this is a huge save, and greatly reduces the amount of more farming you have to do per weapon. Of course, a talent wouldn't be this high on the list if it didn't have a bit of flavor to it. And fortunately, this one sneakily delivers. Wanderer and Raiden are both puppets, and were designed for the same purpose of being a vessel to Ai. So it makes a bunch of sense that they share a skill. Better yet, Ai uses swords and lances, so it goes even deeper since those are the 2 that Raiden discounts. Scaramouche, being her prototype that didn't end up working, discounts the wrong weapon types for her. It's such a great skill on so many levels. I love this one. Charlotte is a weird character with a weird utility passive. Strictly speaking, it doesn't do anything. It doesn't make you move faster, find things faster, help in combat, save resources, or anything else that makes other skills I've sung the praises of so handy. But what it does do is so unique and interesting that I'd be remiss to put it anywhere else. When you use this little camera lens gadget and hold Charlotte's skill, you get to walk around the map in first person. This is so cool. Tevat is a meticulously crafted world with beautiful scenery and set pieces, and getting to see them all from the view of a person actually living the world adds so much to the immersion. Sometimes I like to just aimlessly meander around the world with this active. It's such a great showcase of how thoroughly crafted Tevat really is. This is a talent that is extremely difficult to actually rank, but I think it fully succeeds as a utility passive. It fits the character, it's a fun way to enhance the overall experience, and I mean, just look at this. How can you not love this? We've now arrived at the top of the list, the best utility passive in the game. and I think it's going to stay that way for a long, long time. It's an ability that synergizes with the character's kit, makes overworld exploration substantially smoother, offers something completely unique, and is absolutely bursting with flavor. You probably assumed this was going to end up here from the moment you clicked on this video, and even if you didn't, the process of elimination makes it pretty easy to figure out. On all things meditated is the exploration passive of Nahida, and what an exploration passive it is. It does two main things, each of which individually would score highly on the list, but combined it's an uncontested number one. For starters, when Nahida uses her skill, any overworld collectible that you scan over will be picked up when you release the button. While this may sound unimpressive, you would not believe how many uses it actually has. It saves you from walking over to faraway items. It saves you from crossing water. It saves you from climbing cliffs. It can clear a resource in an area way faster than walking to all of them. It does this, saves time with that, and makes everything so much faster. But that's only half of it, and arguably the less interesting half. You see, when you target a person in Sumeru with Nahida's skill, you get to peer into their thoughts and hear what they're thinking. This applies to every NPC, and even some player characters during quests. There are hundreds of pieces of dialogue here. Some NPCs have different lines that update when you progress quests or during different times of day. Oh yeah, and every single one of these is voiced, even if the character is completely silent otherwise.
I see everything.
Some of these goods are so gaudy.
Just take my word.
Better sell them off quickly and cheaply.
Considering how much I love the extra immersion of Charlotte's talent, you can only guess how much I adore this feature. It adds so much life to the people of Sumeru, and really helps to sell the idea that these are actual people living in this world, not just faces you talk to so you can get some reward. From the moment I started thinking about this video, I knew Nahida was gonna be at the very top. Her skill is the culmination of everything I love about passive talents. It represents her character, it helps with overworld exploration, and it offers a unique ability that can be replicated by any other part of her kit. Exploration passives are great, and Nahida is the wielder of the greatest exploration passive. Passive talents are an important part of any good character in Genshin. They may not help their battle performance be the flashiest part of their kits, but that's not what they're meant to do. Exploration passives are exactly what it says on the tin. Passives to help with exploration. This can mean traversal, or cooking, or crafting, or something completely different. But like I've said many times throughout this video now, the most important thing a passive talent can do is represent the character. They're a nice and easy way to show off a bit of who this person is, what they do, and how they can help you while playing. Over the years, the devs have gotten super creative with these, and it shows. There's so much love and care put into these skills they think goes overlooked, so hopefully this ranking has enlightened some of you. Passives have only gotten better over the years, and I'm curious to see what the future holds for them. Nauticarai started off with resource markers, but considering how many great ideas have already come out of that nation, I'm expecting some really creative passives in the future. Did it have some sort of greater meaning or message behind this video? No, I just think that these things are a cool part of the game that more people should pay attention to, and I wanted to rank them. May as well make it a video to do both. Anyways, that's all I've got for you. I hope you enjoyed this much briefer video of mine, and I'll catch you guys next time. Deuces.